Hello and welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today I'll be talking about Season 5, Episode 3, The Glasses. Hello everyone. How's everyone doing out there? I'm doing okay. I'm doing better than last week. I know last week I was a little bit of a sad sack because my daughter was away on her class trip. She's back now and just, oh my gosh, it couldn't have been more perfect how wonderful a time she had. She was talking our ears off, all of us in the family, the next morning after she got back, just about all of her experiences. So what more could you want as a parent? So I'm so excited that she had that opportunity and that experience. And I felt like she was like 5 years older by the time she got back. She was gone for 6 days and she came back like as an 18-year-old. She just seemed so much more mature. Okay, I do have to mention, unfortunately, another Seinfeld death. Now, this was just a one-time guest star, but I feel like I have to mention it because of the suggestion by contributor Greg that this podcast might be a curse for Seinfeld actors, and people keep dying, God damn it. The actor who died is named Richard Rote. He had a very illustrious and long career, but in reference to Seinfeld, he played one of the doctors that Elaine sees when she has the bad reputation of being a difficult patient. She's got that rash. She's trying to get a doctor to help her. So I believe he's the second doctor she sees, and he kind of glances at her chart and he's like, this doesn't look too bad. Kind of blows her off. So anyway, Richard Rote, he was 89, I believe. So again, it's not that it's some unexpected death. These are mostly old people. So I don't think I have a cursed podcast. I really don't. I don't even believe in curses, but, gets you thinking sometimes. Also, this past week, I've been watching a ton of tennis, my favorite thing. Serena Williams' last match, I got to watch that. Very bittersweet to see her in her last match. She's evolving away from tennis, as she puts it. She doesn't like to say retiring because, well, it's this finality that means it's kind of the end of her identity because she has been just synonymous with women's tennis for so long. So I sort of like that. I like that she's like, no, I'm just evolving away because life is about more than just your career. So I'm really excited to see what's next for Serena Williams. I'm going to miss seeing her playing on the court, but I think we're in for some pretty amazing things that she's going to do with herself in the future. And one last thing I wanted to mention before I dive into the glasses. I was a guest on a really cool podcast. It's called the Spinster Life Podcast, hosted by Amy Kelbing. And wow, it was so much fun. She contacted me, about a couple of months ago now. And she does this podcast that, celebrates single females out there and talks about the issues that single women have to deal with, sort of the stigma of being single and on your own, childless, but also celebrating it and saying, hey, it's not a bad thing. She talks about historical spinsters. She addresses fictional spinsters, which was why she contacted me. She was like, hey, Elaine is probably one of the best fictional spinsters we've had in network television. Would you like to come on my show and talk about it? And I said, let me think about it. I don't have to think about it because it's yes, of course. Instantly, I said yes. So we recorded an episode and she released it this past week. Our episode is called You Think You're Sponge-Worthy? A very fitting title. And we just had such a fun time talking about Elaine. We covered so much. So I think you would really enjoy listening to this episode of the Spinster Life podcast and listen to all of her episodes. She's so smart, has so much great insight into all of the issues that affect females out there who have chosen to be single and childless. So please take a listen and enjoy. Okay, let's get into this episode. The synopsis for The Glasses is as follows. Elaine fears she's contracted rabies after a dog bites her. George thinks his glasses were stolen in a health club locker room. While squinting, he thinks he sees Jerry's girlfriend Amy kissing Jerry's cousin Jeffrey. Kramer gets George a discount on new frames from his sugar-addicted optician friend, Dwayne. This episode was written by Tom Gamble and Max Pross. This is the first episode by Gamble and Pross, and they were a very fun addition to the writer's staff. Jerry Seinfeld talks about how this was the first episode of Seinfeld. The Glasses definitely kind of strayed from how they wanted to make it very realistic, very grounded before that. But they also realized, he and Larry, that you're going to run out after a certain point. So he was hesitant, but also excited that these writers came in and wrote an episode that was kind of out there, a little bit more silly than he was used to. But obviously, ultimately, it became a really great gift to the show. And he admits, it just really broadened everything we could do. And it just made for some amazing episodes. So he was very thankful for that. All right, we start out the episode in Jerry's apartment. Elaine and Jerry are looking out his window and discussing if they've ever spit or thought about spitting on anybody from the window. Kramer enters and he tells Jerry he got him the air conditioner, a Commando 8. Elaine's confused. She's like, "You've always hated air conditioning. Why are you getting an air conditioner?" Kramer answers for him. "Well, Amy likes air conditioning." "Oh, you're getting an air conditioner for Amy. Amy doesn't like the temperature up here. She's a little hot." I love that. George enters with his goggles on. He's got to get out of this city. "So you're tunneling to the center of the earth?" He tells Jerry and Elaine that someone stole his prescription glasses while he was in the pool. Elaine's like, "You don't have an old pair?" "He broke them playing basketball. He was running from a bee." I can relate, George. I hate bees, and I have done very embarrassing things with my body to run away from bees. So I'm kind of on your side here. Elaine is amazed that he has prescription goggles. And George is fuming. He can't believe it. Who is sick and twisted enough to steal another person's glasses? And Elaine says, "Yeah, especially those frames." Kramer suggests that George go see his friend Dwayne at J&T Optical. He says, "You mention my name and you get a 30% discount." George doesn't believe it, but Jerry says, "Hey, he just got me 30% off an air conditioner." George believes it. He says, "What do I have to do?" "You just have to mention my name." That's it, and that's it. My take on this scene, Elaine's little song about Amy not liking the temperature up here. It's one of my favorite Elaine moments of the entire series. I think what works about it, besides the fact that she's adorable when she does it, it's so unexpected. It's a very playful moment, and it's playful within the universe. It's not playful for us, the audience, to only enjoy, but it's like she's making fun of Jerry. She's teasing him, who, let's face it, he's a selfish guy. He doesn't really bend his preferences for anybody else. So that delivery of that mocking sort of sing-songy tone is so fantastic. Of course, JLD does it perfectly. She's got some physicality in there, which I love. That little hip swing move when she says, "She's a little hot." I know you couldn't see that, but I did it right now in my closet where I record. It's just perfect. And then I also love that Kramer, you see him like cracking up. He thinks it's funny. He's so amused by Elaine's little thing there. I love that. And just some quick props to Jerry Seinfeld. I love the way he says he was running from a bee. I just laugh every time he says that. I laugh as hard as Elaine laughs when he says that to her. And then Elaine's quick, especially those frames, to George. It's just another fun moment between George and Elaine. It feeds their dynamic, and I love it. And no wonder, he asks Elaine to help him pick new frames because she clearly has an opinion about it. All right, next we're at J&T Optical. George is trying on frame after frame, asking Elaine what she thinks. She's getting bored, you can tell. She's like, "I've liked about 5 of them." And George says, "Look, this is an important decision. I'm picking a new face." George puts on yet another frame and asks Elaine. She says, "Those are good. They're very bold." And then behind him, she's just like, another physical moment, just like, come on. A man walks in with his dog. Elaine asks to pet the dog, and when she bends down, the dog bites her leg. The guy just walks away, and George is so appalled. Then we see George yelling for the dog man. He follows him out, but then quickly George reacts to something we don't see, something off in the distance, and he's really shocked about it. Back to Elaine. She says her leg looks pretty bad. Jerry says, "You know what? I'm going to take you to the hospital." So he tells George, and George is acting super weird, and Jerry can tell. He keeps asking George, "What's going on? You tell me." All while ignoring Elaine's pleas to leave. She's like, "Jerry, my leg." He's just like, yeah, in a second. Finally, George says, I saw Amy making out with your cousin Jeffrey. Jerry, what? I cannot believe it. Amy and Jeffrey? George says, yes. You can't see anything. There's no lenses in those frames. But George says he was squinting. Finally, Elaine's had enough. She's holding on to her wound, trying to walk out, tells Jerry to just follow the trail of blood, and she holds the door open for him as he finally leaves. After they're gone, George makes a decision, and he approaches Dwayne and says he wants these frames. And then he mentions Kramer. And it does nothing. Dwayne doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. My take on this scene, we get some fun George and Elaine moments here. I like how she's trying to be supportive of him. She's trying to help him with these frames, but her patience, it's run out. You can just tell. That moment after she tells him the frame he's wearing is very bold, and then she has that physical interpretation of how done she is with all of this. She just wants him to make a decision. I love that. I love that. And conceivably, George could probably see her in the reflection, which it makes it even funnier. I also love the choice that they made. And I believe in the commentary, the writers said that Jerry made this choice, how he just sort of dismisses Elaine after the injury because he's so distracted by what George is talking about, why he's acting so weird. And I think it works so well because it's the core of what these characters are. Jerry's distracted now, like he knows his friend has been bitten by a dog. She's bleeding, but now something concerning him is going on. So he's just, she's got to wait. Elaine's line about following the trail of blood is so fantastic. And then her having to hold the door for Jerry. It's just further illustration of what these characters are made of. We just get all of these tastes of like their selfishness, and I love it. All right, next is a quick scene. They're at the hospital. Elaine is getting bandaged up by a doctor, and she's telling Jerry, look, it's impossible that Amy and Jeffrey were making out. I mean, how could they have even met? Jerry's like, it's possible. Look, she loves the park. He works for the parks department. And Elaine points out, George didn't even have his glasses on. But then Jerry tells her about George's amazing squinting skills, this road trip they were on. He was spotting raccoons. And the doctor gets up and says that she's all done. Elaine asks about a shot. And he says, not shot, dog bite. No. I know I wasn't shot. Do I need a shot? He repeats again, not shot, dog bite. Woof, woof, not bang, bang. My take on this scene, I mean, there's not much to it. It's very transactional. We just basically needed to see that Elaine didn't get the rabies shot because of an Indian doctor who apparently can't speak English. Okay, so I'm going to get into this a little bit. I promise not to go on too long, but I have to mention it. This portrayal of the Indian doctor is so fucking stupid and offensive. For the record, I would be offended even if it wasn't an Indian doctor. For those of you who might not know, I am of Indian descent. But it's just very clear it's supposed to be an ethnic character who can't speak English. And by the way, this actor who played the doctor wasn't even Indian. That's another thing that just gets under my skin. Anyway, for all of you out there who are interested in comedy and especially intelligent comedy, kind of playing to people's intelligence, this is called punching down. And what punching down humor is, it's when you make someone's essence of who they are, their ethnicity or their profession, anything that sort of is a big part of their identity, you make that the butt of the joke. So in this scene, the punching down humor is prevalent because the entire reason for this joke is the doctor's ethnicity. Elaine doesn't get the rabies shot because, oh my God, this Indian doctor doesn't understand English. It's so stupid. And more so than the insulting ethnic joke of it, it's just lazy writing. It's just so fucking lazy. No doctor would do this. I just think they could have found a more clever way for Elaine to have skipped the rabies shot that wasn't so cheap, punching down to an ethnicity, and so idiotic, and just kind of this wouldn't happen. So, and I know I'm watching a fictional show and there's plenty of things in Seinfeld that wouldn't happen. But to me, this was just indicative of super lazy writing. We're laughing because this doctor is Indian and doesn't understand English. It's just so poorly done. Very lazy to me. So that's all I will say about that. Moving on. Next, we're in Jerry's apartment. Jerry's with Amy, the girlfriend, and they're on the couch watching TV. The cable goes out, and Jerry calls the cable company, and she says, no, that's okay. We don't have to watch TV. And he says, no, no, no. He wants them to know that they're not getting away with anything. While he's on hold with the cable company, he asks Amy what she did yesterday. Good day to be out? She says she didn't do anything. Well, you must have done something. Didn't go out of the house? Didn't take a walk on Columbus Avenue? Jerry gives up on the cable company and says they'd be back in a minute, and they lied. You can't trust anyone. No, you can't. Now let's cut the bull, sister. Jerry just lays into Amy, accusing her of swapping spit with someone. He says that my friend saw you. Saw me with who? You tell me. She says there's nothing to tell. Jerry sort of has nothing else to say and says, oh, want to get some pizza? Amy gets up. She's like, you know what? I knew this was too good to be true. She says she sees an ugly side of Jerry now. And then she's going to go. It's too hot in the apartment. He asks, but we're still on for Friday, right? Yeah, she thinks about it and she says yes. And asks, when do you get an air conditioner? It's coming. He's excited to tell her. You know, it's going to be like a meat locker in here. So Amy was played by the very recognizable Anna Gunn, who is best known for her role as Skylar White from Breaking Bad, alongside Bryan Cranston, Tim Whatley. I always loved when I was watching Breaking Bad to know that they each had a Seinfeld connection. In my estimation, Anna Gunn is one of the best actresses out there. Her portrayal of Skylar is easily in my top 10 performances of all time. I think she's so incredible. Breaking Bad is just one of my favorite shows of all time. And also randomly, she had a very hilarious cameo in the Mindy Project. It's an episode called Girl Crush, and I highly recommend for you to check that out. Anna Gunn can really do it all. She's really funny in the Mindy Kaling episode, and obviously Breaking Bad was definitely a dramatic role. There were some lighter moments that she did really well. And all in all, fantastic actress. I think she's so incredibly talented. In reference to this episode, sort of in contrast of all the praise I just gave her, I've always felt her performance as Amy, it's very wooden, but it isn't bad. It's not like she's acting poorly. I guess she made this choice about Amy as a character as just kind of wooden and very stiff. Look, she's not written to be a very deep character or even very three-dimensional. She gets no comedy whatsoever. So I'm not criticizing her performance per se, but I guess I find Amy very uninteresting. Nevertheless, it's always fun to see these cameos by actors who went on to massive success in their careers on other shows. All right, next we're in Jerry's apartment, and Jerry's telling George he was an idiot for listening to him. Amy now sees this bad side. He wasn't planning on showing that side for another 6 months. And he tries to say, look, Amy said nothing happened. And George is so offended. I'm your best friend. Yeah, but you're blind as a bat. And then he reminds him about the road trip and spotting the raccoons. They were mailboxes, you idiot. I didn't have the heart to tell you. And then George sees a dime on the floor across the room. And this is totally baffling Jerry because, again, how can he see that? Elaine enters, and Jerry asks what took her so long that she buzzed 5 minutes ago. Well, there was a dog outside the building, and it spooked her. She couldn't come in until it left. Jerry knows the dog. Wait, a little white dog? Snowball? She's like, yeah, he frightened me. He's like a squirrel. Elaine is scared of dogs now after she got bit. George can't believe that Elaine didn't get a rabies shot after being bitten by a strange dog. Jerry suggests that she goes back to the optical store and asks Dwayne if he knows the dog's owner. She likes that idea. And then Kramer enters and George tells him, hey, by the way, there was no discount. I mentioned your name and then bupkis. Kramer cannot believe it. This guy owes Kramer. He got him off sugar. He says, you know what, George, let's go right now. Let's go down and talk to him. George says, yeah. Let me just get an apple first. Then George bites into an onion, and Elaine points that out. You know, George, that's an onion. But George has too much pride to stop eating it and says, yes, it is, as if he meant to grab an onion and start eating it. Elaine points out he couldn't tell an apple from an onion, and he's your eyewitness. Jerry's confused. He's spotting dimes. He's eating onions. He doesn't know what the hell's going on. Kramer says, look, just set up a situation where Amy and Jeffrey are in the same room. Oh, and then Jerry's like, yes, I can do that because I'm getting Paul Simon tickets from Jeffrey. He'll take Amy with him. When Jeffrey opens the door, it's howdy doody time. And George completely in tears from eating an onion, says, "You'll see, I'm right." My take on the scene, I think this is the first time we're seeing it, but this is one of my favorite sides of Elaine, the trembling lip Elaine. It comes back again and again, but I just love her face when she plays this emotion. I'm afraid of dogs now. Her mouth just completely downturns, and it's like she's trying to not to cry. I'm just all about it. This is one of my favorite JLD choices, when Elaine is emotional and she has this little lip moment. Oh, it's so funny. JLD doesn't get a ton in this scene, but a lot happens. And most of the comedy is with George eating that onion, which I have to say is pretty amazing. Kudos to Jason Alexander for committing so hard. That was a real onion. Apparently it was boiled, so it probably wasn't as harsh, but I don't care. If you're biting into a whole onion, I mean, come on. I just can't imagine how long after filming that was he tasting onion. I would think it would have to be at least 4 or 5 days. You can brush, use mouthwash, chew gum, but that's a strong taste. And I really don't think that would go away for days. All right, next we're at J&T Optical. This is just Kramer confronting Dwayne, saying, "What is going on here? What about the discount?" He reminds him, whips out a Baby Ruth first and reminds him, what he went through and how Kramer really helped him get off all this sugar. I'm not going to get into all of it, but I just love the rundown of what this guy was doing. Of course, it's supposed to parallel someone on drugs and addicted to something much, much harder than sugar. But this scene is really funny. Elaine is with them. She's trying to ask Dwayne about the dog, but Dwayne is so shooken up after Kramer basically shouts in his face that he just throws them all out. Next, we're in Jerry's apartment. We see George wearing his new frames, and Jerry says, "I don't know what to tell you, Elton." Elaine is at Jerry's table. She's reading the symptoms of rabies and getting increasingly worried. Anxiety, irritability. I've got those. I'm irritable. Jerry points out to George that these are ladies' glasses. George is so annoyed. Well, Elaine was supposed to help me. Elaine charges at George, says she got bit by a dog. She had to go to the hospital. She was bleeding to death. "I can't solve every little problem you have." Whoa, what the heck? She backs up after the outburst and apologizes. I'm sorry. Walks back to the table. Kramer enters. The Commando 8 has arrived. He puts the air conditioner in the window frame and says, "Installed," and that he'll be back later to seal it up. Jerry says, "Great, just in time for Amy." We hear Elaine say, "Oh, I have such a headache." "Oh, that's another symptom." Kramer asks, "A symptom of what?" "Rabies." "Oh, that's fatal. You don't want to have that." Uh-oh, we had another outburst from Elaine. "I know we don't want it. I don't need you to tell me what I don't want, you stupid hipster doofus." Jerry pulls her away. Hey, what's going on here? Elaine sort of comes to and apologizes to Kramer. He forgives her. Look, he had a friend who had rabies. He looks over and sees George eating pretzels and asks, "May I have one of those, madam?" What are you calling me madam for? Kramer's like, "It's ladies' frames." He takes them off George's face and points out, it says Gloria Vanderbilt collection. George is livid. "He sold me ladies' glasses." Then Elaine gets their attention, saying she's having trouble swallowing. I can't swallow. She's getting panicky. She runs over to the counter, takes a sip of seltzer, and then just starts foaming at the mouth. Then we get a quick scene of Elaine with the Indian doctor and getting the shot. "Will this hurt?" "Yes, very much." Bad accent, too. And my take on this scene. All right, here we go. We got some solid comedy for Elaine here, and JLD, awesome as usual. First, the outbursts at George and Kramer are so fun. I love what she says and how JLD delivers those bits of dialogue. And then the quick turn right after she yells at them in their faces and apologizes. Oh gosh, all those moments work so well. I think raging Elaine is just as fun as lip trembling Elaine. It's just so entertaining. And I have to point out that physical comedy, when she says she can't swallow, it's that first realization at the table where she's like, I can't swallow. Like, it's so convincing. I mean, how do you act like you can't swallow? Well, JLD provides a lesson in this scene. What she does with her voice, that sort of action with her mouth. She's like turning her neck. And of course, the climax of her panic when she takes the swig and then the foam comes out. Just absolutely fearless. And an example of what that JLD wisdom that I love so much. Don't worry about looking like an idiot for the sake of comedy. You got to do it in order to make the comedy work. And she definitely does that here. Next, we're in Jerry's apartment. Elaine is in front of the air conditioner, enjoying the cool air blowing on her. She's all recovered now, apparently. And she's telling Jerry, look, there's no way Amy would date Jeffrey. He looks like a horse. As she turns around, she spots out the window on the street the guy with the dog. And she shouts down the window, I had to get shots because of your stupid dog. Hey, who you calling stupid? Hey, should we spit on him? I love that from Jerry. Elaine's like, no, let's go downstairs. So as they're about to leave, Kramer walks in singing, Oh, my papaya. He slams the door, which causes the Commando 8 to start teetering on the windowsill. He rushes over the air conditioner. He tries to keep it from falling, but he's too late. It falls out the window. Kramer watches it. I think it got the dog. My take on this scene, it's Elaine's last scene of the episode, unfortunately. There's not much to it, but we do get to see our confrontational Elaine and how fired up she gets. I love that she calls the dog stupid. And we're here at the onset of the ongoing issues that Elaine has with dogs. I sort of love it. This is our first taste of Elaine and her woes with dogs. All right, next we are at the health club. George is in the locker room. He's drying off, and a blind man asks him if he can escort him to his locker. George says, of course, and takes the man's arm, but then he sees the son of a bitch who stole my glasses and starts running after him, with this poor blind guy having no choice but to run with him. They actually go outside, and George says, he's getting into a cab. He notices the blind man's glasses and says, oh, those are pretty nice frames. Well, that guy doesn't like them. They pinch my nose. Huh, you don't say. Next, we see them at J&T Optical. He's asking Dwayne to switch the lenses in the frames, leans in and says, you should give me a discount because you sold me ladies' frames. What's that about ladies' frames? The dog man walks in and asks Dwayne if he knows anything about the lady that was messing with his dog. And then George, for whatever reason, divulges all this information, Jerry's apartment number, and the dog man's very pleased. Next, we're at Jeffrey's apartment. Amy is wondering what they're doing there. She's very annoyed at how Jerry's acting so mysteriously. Uncle Leo opens the door. Jeffrey's not there. Totally ruins Jerry's plan. As Uncle Leo is bragging about Jeffrey, his interest in botany and zoology, and keeps in touch with his professors. Jerry says, hey, did he leave any tickets for me? Oh yeah, I'll go get them. So then Amy finds out they're going to the Paul Simon concert in the park. She's so excited. Oh, so that's why you were acting so mysteriously. As Uncle Leo gives him the tickets, he says, oh, Jeffrey's message to you. He says he's very sorry and he hopes you can forgive him. Aha! So you were making out with him. Amy is so confused. She doesn't even know Jeffrey. Oh, so this is why you brought me here. Uncle Leo says no. He apologizes because the seeds aren't very good. Oh. Want to get some pizza? Back to J&T Optical. The switch has been made with the frames. George and the blind man are exiting the store. George takes the glasses off and says, whoa, these really do pinch the nose. Tough luck. A deal's a deal. While his glasses are off, George sees Amy and Jeffrey again. Then he puts his glasses on and sees it's a female police officer kissing a horse. All right, in the last scene of the episode, we're in the health club locker room. George and Jerry are there together. Jerry's still baffled that he spotted that dime. He thinks he planted it. And he mentions he has to pay the vet bill for that stupid dog. How did that guy get my information? George is like, oh, yeah, I don't know. George complains again about those pinchy frames. And he says, if I ever catch the son of a bitch who stole my glasses. And we see the camera shot pan up. And there's George's glasses sitting on top of the lockers. All right, I'm going to take a quick break, and I will see you on the other side. Meet Tukey, Georgina, and Boop. 3 dog buddies doing the best they can in the small town of Doodle Bumps. But they aren't your typical cuddly canine pals. They have rabies! Born under the loading dock of the Jimble Jamble grocery, Tukey, Georgina, and Boop were abandoned by their mom and then violently attacked by a raccoon. And that raccoon was then killed by a coyote. It was horrific, but they stuck together and became the Rabies Babies! Join these unwell pups on many rabid adventures all over Doodle Bumps. See Tukey cause a lockdown at the Chooky Elementary School when she staggers onto the playground because she's totally disoriented. Laugh along with Georgina as she keeps drooling and drooling uncontrollably. Feel the rush with Boop as his fever gets so high he hallucinates he can fly. Tune in to Rabies Babies every Tuesday night on Nick Jr. And don't miss the special crossover event when our Rabies Babies infiltrate Adventure Bay, home to the heroic pups of Paw Patrol. Will police dog Chase get rabies after an intense hostage standoff with the Rabies Babies? Or will he and Tukey find love? Tune in to find out this fall. The Rabies Babies! They could die any day now. And we're back. There were some extras for this episode. There was commentary by the writers, and I thought this was interesting. This is more for writing nerds out there. I loved what they said about pitching ideas to Jerry and Larry, how, in fact, they had been warned before taking the job at Seinfeld, like, hey, look, Jerry and Larry really want all the control. They really won't take your ideas. Just be prepared for that. They want to write every word of the show. So Tom and Max were like, I guess we were prepared for that. But what we learned quickly was that Jerry and Larry were, in fact, very open, especially if stories were built on personal experiences. So, for example, in this episode, I believe Tom Gamble had his glasses stolen. Like Jerry had said earlier from the Inside Look, I quoted him as saying, we were a little bit weary of moving away from being more realistic and grounded. But even if they're going to go a little bit more silly and over the top, if it stems from a personal experience, they were very, very interested and more prone to accept it into the episode. So I just thought that was really interesting. They also mentioned how refreshing it was that Jerry, the star of the show, the big comedian, right, in the show, was so generous with the comedy, with the funny. They had worked with many different comedians on different shows, and that was rare for a comedian to not want to have all the funny plot lines. So they were just really impressed that Jerry was so generous with all of that. And I've mentioned it before, Jerry was very aware of the fact that, hey, these are incredible actors that I'm working with. They can handle this stuff better than I can. So pretty interesting. They both give props to Julia in the scene where she's doing the sort of foaming at the mouth. They said, wow, it's just so rare for a beautiful actress to be willing to demean herself for the sake of comedy. And we know that our JLD does that. So I thought it was nice that they mentioned that in the commentary. There was a deleted scene where we see Amy making out with Jeffrey. We just see the back of Jeffrey's head. I'm glad this was deleted. It really would have made Amy the villain here, but I think it played better without this scene because Jerry definitely deserved the humiliation of being wrong about Amy and Jeffrey. There was one thing in the notes about nothing that I honestly find hard to believe, but I'm going to believe it because it was in the notes about nothing. They were talking about things that the cast members took from the set as keepsakes. And they said Julia Louis-Dreyfus took all of Elaine's wardrobe after the series wrapped. I guess I find that hard to believe because of every time JLD does commentary for an episode, she's horrified at what she's wearing. So I'm like, did she really take all of it? I could see a few pieces here and there. But anyway, that's what it said. All right, moving on to Contributor Corner. Greg sent in some thoughts, and here they are. First, Greg says, I actually remember watching this episode when it originally aired with my grandparents. I specifically remember when George says, son of a bitch, my grandma being shocked by that on network TV. I guess that would be kind of shocking. Oh, grandma. Greg goes on to say, the whole first scene between Elaine and Jerry is so childish, but yet I like it. From the talk of spitting on people from the window to when Elaine teases Jerry about getting an air conditioner because of Amy. These are not mature people. However, this dynamic between them is my favorite, and as Elaine gets a little harder in later years, that playful side of her kind of goes away a little bit. Yeah, I kind of agree. There's still like silliness to Elaine in later seasons, but it's got a harder edge to it. I think I know what you mean there, Greg. Yeah, and I think we agree about that moment in that first scene where she does a little Amy thing. It's so unexpected, and it's the playfulness that's unexpected, not only just to see it on the show, but within their little universe. Like, they're having fun with each other. So I loved it all. Next, Greg says, I like that Elaine and Jerry both go with George to the optical store, but yet are so irritated right when we see them there. It's a good way to show that this is taking forever, and I like how both JLD and Jerry physically play this impatience. Again, this is a strong JLD face acting episode. From the dog bite to getting the rabies shot, she plays every part of this all with her facial contortions. I think only Maya Rudolph is in her league when it comes to being able to convey impatience, fear, anger, and pain, all without saying a word. Her face when she gets the shot makes me laugh out loud every time. Completely agree, Greg. I do love all of the face acting. That's why I did mention her physicality a lot in this episode. And I think face acting falls under that umbrella of physicality because you're not speaking. And it's all so well done. And, it's hard not to overdo that because, it depends on the show. It depends on where you're doing it. But on a show like Seinfeld, you do want to keep it a little bit restrained because it has to stay somewhat grounded. But, and she does such a great job with that. Certainly, I think Maya Rudolph on SNL had a lot more freedom to be a little bit over the top. But I know what you mean, though. Even when she's been in series and movies and stuff, she does a great job with just all those facial expressions. Everything's just kind of being communicated facially. And it's such a great talent. Next thought by Greg. There is one thing that always really bothers me in this episode. When Amy is first seen at Jerry's apartment and gets in the argument, she leaves and the last thing she says is, "When are you getting an air conditioner?" Right after she says the line, she turns really abruptly to leave, and it's very unnatural. Why would you ask a question and then walk away before the person responds? I don't know if this was a direction or a choice the actress, I want to call her Skylar because she is forever the wife in Breaking Bad to me, made. I know this has nothing to do with Elaine, but it seriously irks me and I had to mention it. I'm so glad you mentioned it. I've always thought that was really odd too. When you get an air conditioner, turn. Like, who does do that? It is weird. I don't know what to say. I didn't mention it earlier because I, again, want to keep this Elaine-centric, but it is worth mentioning because that's such an odd choice. And I do probably think it was a direction. I don't think Anna Gunn made that choice, but I think they liked how Jerry was sort of yelling down the hallway to her about the air conditioner, which I like too. But yeah, there probably could have been a better way for her to like properly exit. It's very, who to your point, Greg, who asks a question and it's like, I'm just going to walk away. I'm not going to wait for an answer. I'm glad you mentioned that. And finally, Greg says, my favorite scene is when Elaine thinks she has rabies and has bouts of rage. She's reading symptoms as if she were looking them up on WebMD, and then all of a sudden, whatever it says she has, she acts as if she does. There's no telling if she actually has rabies or if this is just psychosomatic, but either way, it works because she plays it so well. What I love about this episode is that all four are involved in the same story without a lot of offshoot plots. Something as simple as George having his glasses stolen now changes everyone's day. This is a great episode for all four, and they each have some really strong comedy to play with. I totally agree with that. I'll get more into that with my final notes. But back to what you're saying, does Elaine actually have rabies, or is it what you're saying, the psychosomatic thing where she's reading these things and she automatically feels them, which is a very real thing. I know I've done it. I've talked before on this podcast. I am a recovering hypochondriac. I shouldn't say recovering. I'm a much improved hypochondriac. I used to be way worse than I am now. But certainly it's like you read something, you're worried about it. I am feeling this. I'm totally feeling this. I like to think she does not have rabies, and those bouts of rage is just her anxiety about having rabies coming out. And like she's saying things she's always wanted to say to these guys. Those bouts of rage were the actual thoughts she has in her head and represses herself from saying to these idiots. So I'm going to go with that. That's just my personal belief now. Thank you so much, Greg, for sending in thoughts this week. If you would like to become a contributor to Hot and Heavy, please email me at elainepodcast@gmail.com. That's elainepodcast@gmail.com. And you can send thoughts, like one thought, 3 words, a picture of you just saying, I like this episode, or I don't like this episode, a thumbs up, a thumbs down, whatever it is, I will take it. I want more thoughts on this podcast, please. So please get in touch with me, elainepodcast@gmail.com, and your thoughts could be on the next episode of Hot and Heavy. My favorite Elaine moments. Oh, I have so much to choose from. It's so great. Well, as I said, I love the little song and dance at the top. She's a little hot. It's so good. And then the bouts of rage, just what Greg said. Each outburst is so delicious. I think I like the Kramer one just a little bit better. I love the delivery because she snaps her head up. She's got that look on her face. I know I don't want it. Oh, it's so good. And then my final notes. This is a really fun episode. It's a departure from the more grounded stories that Seinfeld sort of prided itself on from seasons 1 to 4. But I really think the addition of Max and Tom to the writing staff, it just opened them up to so much more. And they found out, look, they can be a little absurd and silly, but still stay true to Jerry and Larry's voice. And in fact, they talked about that. The entire sugar run that Kramer goes on when he confronts Dwayne, that was all a rewrite by Larry David. Like, he came up with all of that. So it's cool. It's like this combination of something that's sillier, but yet still has that classic Jerry and Larry feel to it. One thing I learned as I was researching for this episode, they had first slated the rabies storyline for Kramer. Oh, but I'm so glad they gave it to Elaine instead. They changed that whole thing around. It sounded, in fact, like they did like a little musical chairs thing with all the plot lines, because originally the mention my name for the discount thing was going to be Jerry's plot line. But Jerry and Larry said, hey, I think that would work better with Kramer. So everything just kind of got shuffled around, and they gave Elaine the rabies storyline, which is amazing. And this is a great example where gender played no part in assigning these storylines. I mean, yeah, it would have worked with Kramer. I'm sure Michael Richards would have made it funny in a different way, but hey, giving it to JLD will still have a hilarious result, and it's just a different interpretation, but just as funny. And I absolutely love that. I just love that they do that. You know, they didn't make it a female-centric rabies story. It was just, no. One of the main 4 gets bitten by a dog and they think they have rabies. That's all it is. And let these incredibly talented actors just run with it. Wow, JLD had a lot of fun comedy to play with in this very, very balanced episode. Like Greg said, everyone had really funny moments, and they all performed super well. I thought this was a high level of acting by everyone. I love how Jerry, in the scene with Amy, you know, when he's trying to get her to fess up about making out with Jeffrey, it seemed, I mean, he's having so much fun. You could just tell he's having so much fun just being like, didn't take a walk on Columbus Avenue. Like, it's a really solid performance. And all 4 of them, they all get a pretty equal share of the comedy. And I really think that's when we get the best episodes of Seinfeld. And I think that's all I can say about the glasses. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.